And now, boys and girls, more fun that you can have with your Capri with Bodie and Doyle.
3 inches.
4.
We hit the line and she's mine all mine. I'm running free in my Capri. Maybe, baby, we'll rock and roll. Maybe, baby, we'll lose control. What do you see? Capri for me.
Hiya, I'm Mike Sweeney. I'm your genial host on a magical trip through time as we take a look at another of the UK's great motoring icons.
The thing with the Capris, it's the working man's Ferrari.
They were a stylish car at the time. It had all the modern extras of what they were at that time on it.
Without a doubt, the Ford Capri is arguably the best car they've ever produced.
We do the stroll, we rock and roll, we do the twist, we've never missed. Do the wild tootsie and do the jerk. Hey baby, you'll wanna see it work. What do you see? Capri for me.
Affordability was one of the main reasons why the car sold so well. I mean, for less than £1,000, you could have something that looked just out of this world.
Nobody had offered a sort of sports coupe at working man's prices.
One of the nice things about the Capri is it was very much a mass market car. It was a secondary modern car. It wasn't aimed at snobs, it was aimed at real people.
It's a family car as well as a sports car, and it's coming into its own as a classic car now. It's quite a large following.
You know, if you come back to numbers, there was something like about 1.25 million Capris made.
This is the new Ford Capri. A genuine fastback that's fun to drive, but doesn't cost a fortune. A car that you'd take for a sleek two-seater, but in fact will hold 4 adults in comfort.
The Ford Capri was more than just a motor car. It underpinned an entire lifestyle for over 20 years. And if you want to get a great illustration of that image, it's best done with Bodie and Doyle in that all-action thrilling series, The Professionals. And the way they got the effects they wanted from the cars, they must have battered them to bits.
The way that the Professional series encapsulated the Capri, if you will, certainly encouraged younger drivers. It gave an image and certainly sold the car in many ways.
A direct quote from them is that the cars were used mostly in 2nd and 3rd gear because that's where the low end grunt is, to make it hang its back end out.
The 3-litre Capri S's in the Professionals. I mean, it wasn't long before the toy industry was turning out models of the car. It was just great.
Well, in fact, it all goes back to Z cars, when the Merseyside police were already using Ford Zephyrs. When it was translated to television, it was natural that they would use it. So there was a sort of tradition within Ford that if you could help a television company, you would do it.
Can you believe that in the first series of The Professionals, Bodie and Doyle potted around in pretty naff old Rovers and Triumphs?
It seems hard to believe that you could go chasing the criminals, you know, in something that was made by British Leyland.
From the second season onward, it was clear that Bodie and Doyle needed some real cool wheels, and they were given a Ford Escort RS 2000 and fabulous 3-litre Capris as their company cars. Now these were image cars, and it helped boost sales of those cars even more here in the UK.
They were using 3-litre Capris at the time, and that's what everybody wanted, and it was a good selling point for Ford.
And suddenly there was the opportunity with this programme, The Professionals, because there was a very good relationship with the property buyers by that stage, who wanted more exciting motor cars for this new series of The Professionals. And they looked at the Capri and said, that is ideal for the two gung-ho detectives.
Ford Capris in those days were the cars, there's no two ways about it. So going from a Mini and an Escort into a Capri S, we certainly thought we'd made it, not just on the football stage, but in life as well. And when you look back at it now, the Ford Capri, when Bodie and Doyle in the professionals, Gary Owen and Peter Barnes, we really were up there amongst it all.
But I wonder if you knew that Bodie and Doyle's registration plates are not all they seem.
And a little known fact, in the last series, the cars that were used are actually displaying false number plates because they were given 2 new cars by Ford, and in order to maintain the continuity they had to get special permission from DVLA to continue the registration numbers from the previous series.
Now, to discover the origins of the fabulous Ford Capri, we have to start our journey back in the land of Ford's global headquarters, the United States of America. Ford's bosses had known for some time that in the middle of the 60s, a huge population boost was about to happen. This so-called baby boom would result in a load of young drivers who really wouldn't want to drive the sorts of cars their parents had tootled around in. Ford designers toiled long and hard to create a sexy-shaped, front-engined, 4-seater that would outsleek any other American car, even that arch-rival, the Corvette. So the very first production Ford Mustang was shown to the public for the very first time at the New York's World Fair on April the 17th, 1964. What's more, this wasn't a let's tease you now and we'll make some cars you can buy next year thing. The Mustang went on sale at Ford dealers across the states the very same day. How about that for coordination?
Mustang was launched in the States in 1964, became an instant success. There was a move in the 60s with the expansion of lifestyles that people wanted something that looked different, i.e. they wanted a sporty car.
To make the Mustang affordable, it needed to share much of its engineering with an existing Ford product. That product in the States was the humble Falcon. In fact, the first Mustangs were built in the same Michigan plant. But the punters didn't care, because the Mustang was all American, all desirable, and most importantly, all affordable.
I very much was captivated, if you will, by the Mustang, and I suppose my all-time favourite American car is the 64.5 Mustang, which this became the sort of European version of in many ways. And I think that again captured the imagination of the American public, as did the Capri the European market.
Ford had created an instant brand, calling it after a breed of horse and creating the "a steed for every need" advertising line, even showing the car racing away from a herd of Mustangs in their promotional films. This made every American think about the new Ford Mustang every time they saw a horse. And let's be honest, there's flipping loads of them out there in the States.
Oh, the Mustang is one of the industry's great icons. And it was such a success, a runaway success, that the powers that be in Ford of Europe at the time decided, well, if you took the basic concept of Mustang, could we make it work in the market over here?
The Mustang Kick started an incredible success story, bringing sporting, dash and styling at a price almost anyone could afford. These cars were simple, and yet they had timeless elegance and style. So what could Ford UK do to capture the hearts of the baby boomer drivers over here? These young drivers were not going to follow in the pipe and slippered footsteps of mum and dad and their oh so boring family runarounds.
Before the Capri was launched in 1968, the sports car market tended to be open-top 2+2s, the likes of Triumph Spitfires, MGs, Austin Healey's, which in their own right are very superb vehicles, but it was a very limited market.
There was obviously a gap that needed to be filled, so would Ford's formula of a sporty hatchback and a muscle car appeal to the UK market? Well, the Cortina had just been launched, and it seemed sensible to create a fastback sporty machine based on that. But why go to all that trouble? Why not save the hassle of redesigning and simply adapt the American Mustang's plans for the right-hand drive market?
If Ford had brought the Mustang or tried to sell the Mustang in this country, I don't think really that it would have worked. The the key to the Capri's success really was its cost. Affordability is a great option.
What you had to appeal to was to people's aspirations, and it's all very well offering them their dream car, but if the dream car's still out with the reach, then it could end up backfiring on you.
I don't think the Mustang would have worked in this country for the simple reason that it wouldn't have been able to have been marketed at the prices that the Capri could have been.
Well, to be honest, I don't think anybody with the 5.5 litre engines and the price of petrol, I don't think it would have taken off, to tell you the truth.
The secret was to meet their aspirations with a car that looked just as great as the one they wanted to have, say it was a Mustang, but in a package and at a price they could afford, and that was the secret of the Capri.
What do you see? Capri for me. Bodie and Doyle are driving down the street. They get respect from everyone they meet. It's a 3-litre baby and it looks so fine. Bodie and Doyle are gonna hit that line. What do you see? Capri for me.
And so the Capri was designed from scratch for the European market. From the dusty archives, we uncovered this film of the Capri unveiled at a big car show in Belgium.
Ford Belgium, market leader since 8 years, unveiled the Ford Capri.
Of course, in those days, car launches were more of a crude affair, with some old bedsheet covering the world's first Capri. And the car wasn't even complete.
And lo, up goes the immaculate white cover concealing the star attraction of the Brussels car show, and what is already the car sensation of the year, the glorious Capri. What's that? A door missing? Look, boys, I know you've been hustled quite a bit, but all the same, this is somewhat thick. And the Capri proudly swings around, a bit of a show-off, if you ask me.
From day one, all the advertising and marketing was heavily targeted at men and our inherent love of cars and flash machines, even to the extent of distracting us from our other big love: girls, 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 and more beautiful girls. But these cars weren't all macho speed machines. There was enough luxury to pamper the fairer sex as well. And just look how many girlfriends you could take out at the same time. The old-fashioned idea that all sports cars should just be two-seaters was definitely taking a back seat.
The important thing about the Ford Capri is you can't see what's under the bonnet. So it may be a 1300 or a 1600 or a 2 litre or a 3 litre or a 2.8. It may be turboed, it may be anything. It looks like a Capri no matter what it is. Just because it's a 1.3 doesn't necessarily mean it's not a full-bodied Capri. So that's the beauty of the Capri. It doesn't matter what size engine you've got, it's a nice car.
Ford's promotion films emphasised the glamorous lifestyle the Capri offered. Let's just say you've chatted up this fit bird that you met on holiday by saying, "Excuse me, love, can I try out my new camera with you?" "Oh yeah? Well listen, we've all tried that one, haven't we lads, be honest." And then, after using up a few rolls of film, you'd persuade her to take a quick stroll with you around the hotel pool before surprising her with a glance at your shiny new Capri outside. Fancy a ride, love?
As there had been with Cortina, the identification of a gap in the market, which was quickly sort of seen to be Capri.
What's that? Capri?
Capri.
Well, that was the way we were all meant to pronounce it, but of course, it never turned out that way.
When the car first came out and management were trying to use the term Capri rather than Capri because it had a more exotic sounding name.
Certainly in Europe, it's the Capri.
In actual fact, when the car was launched in 1969, in the launch films, they talk about the Ford Capri, but I think that was just the American voiceover, just being a bit more, you know.
Of course, when the design teams were working on the car, it was known to them, still keeping the horse theme, as the Colt project.
For a model program, you always, in fact, handed a code name, and it became known as the Colt program. However, the trade name belonged to Mitsubishi. so we weren't allowed to use it.
Now stay with us, gang, because next we're going to be meeting some more Capri owners and having a look at a very furry, customised Capri from one of the best known comedy series on television.
It's my Capri.
To say that the Capri was a head turner when it hit the streets was a mega understatement, as this French promotion for Ford shows the choice of a Capri as a getaway car for these hapless villains isn't a very good one because so many people pay them attention. Oh, look at those sexy lines of that lovely interior, so smooth. Let me feel it. Oh, yes. And when the bad guys discover that the local boys in blue have also discovered the power of the Capri for their patrols, well, these bad guys are as good as nipped.
They were chosen by the police because of their performance, the fact they would be able to keep up with everything on the road in those days. They were basically standard 2.8s. As soon as you jump in a Capri, you can't resist. This is a foot-stomping, tyre-squealing car, even if it's a 1300. If it's a V6, you can't help but squeal the tyres. It's the nature of the beast. You've got to compare that this car is from the 70s, and the way they handle and perform and take off. You can't drive that respectable.
The new Ford Capri. The difference between driving and just motoring.
Shouldn't that line have been the other way around? The difference between motoring and driving? Mind you, I guess it shows the evolution of the English language over the last few years. And haven't presentational styles changed completely? Can you imagine a modern marketing presentation where somebody turns to camera and says,
"Good evening. I have news for you."
Excuse me?
I have news for you.
Oh, that's really got my attention. Not.
Good news. The announcement by Ford of Dagenham of 2 new cars. Now, this model on my left is called the Escort, and the deluxe version on my right is called the Squire.
Oh, the Squire. Very, very posh. Well, let's you and I forget about the curious Escort Squire that's disappeared into the mist of history, and let's get back to the brilliant Capri, which, if the Capri enthusiasts have anything to do with it, will have a name that will live forever. For example, this is Richard Boy's stunning Mark I outside his home in Widnes. Lovely, isn't it? But inside that home, every wall is covered with Capri memorabilia from the years when Richard was on the production line.
This is a picture of the final assembly line where I used to work at Halewood. If I can just point out, this is where the engines come up on the track. This is one of the jobs I used to do. It was actually called body decking. We actually load a body on top of the engine, then used to bolt everything up. At the time, the line speed was 26 an hour, so you only got sort of like close on 2 minutes to do the job, which sounds incredible, you know, 2 minutes to put an engine in. But in them days, Ford were only interested in mass production. Old friend of mine there, Arthur Jacks, he's probably dead now. And as you can see, compared to the modern plants, that's how it used to look.
Now you'd think that after a long hard morning at the Halewood plant, you'd enjoy a lunch break at the canteen, wouldn't you? Not if you're creating a classic for your job.
Instead of going to the canteen, we used to just go down the lines looking at them, all the different colours and what have you, because most people were in awe at the time because there was nothing quite like it.
While Richard took us for a spin, he revealed to us the last minute and late hour styling changes that could have contributed to the Capri's success.
And just before it was signed off, when it was a clay model, the actual roof line at the back wasn't quite as sloped as it is now. And once it was signed off, the designers stayed behind at night, hammered the pegs down and skimmed some of the clay off, and that's and went into full production then, and not many people know that actually.
Here's another gorgeous example, Andrew Jolly's 2-litre GT Mark I with an XLR pack. And what's this? You don't see many auto sticks on a Capri, do you?
When I was a kid, knee-high to a grasshopper, the Capri was the car you aspired to, and it took me until last year to actually find one which I could afford and buy. And as you can see, this is the car. I'm the third owner now, but it's done a genuine 46,000 miles. And apart from some good old-fashioned elbow grease, what you see is what you get.
This is the pride and joy of Mike Forman from Somerset. Well, to be honest, it's one of quite a collection, actually.
I've actually got 12 Capris, sort of 11 are in this condition, and I've got one which is being restored at the moment. The Capri's special to me because it was pretty much my first car 23 years ago now, and I just never changed from the model, just love the shape. It's just an eye-catching vehicle these days, and you don't see many of them on the road.
Michael's car here is a 1973 M-Reg machine, but that old M plate has hit the dustbin to be replaced by that brilliant number plate GXL3L.
Onyx green is the colour, quite an unusual colour. The car has been painted, but all the panels are original. It's never had any welding done, and the vehicle has only really been on the road for the last 18 months or so. Before that, it was off the road for 18 years.
He's a lucky man, but who was the previous owner who left this beauty unloved and undriven for 18 years? Not a full shilling. Now here is a pretty rare Capri, owned by the rather fortunate Victor Smith from Worcestershire.
This is an Aston Martin Tickford Turbo Capri. It's number 25 out of 100. I do most of the servicing myself. Keep it all up to speed. They're pretty simple engines. It's based on the 2.8, just got a few added extras on there.
With a lovely walnut dash and quality leather interior to top off a car with one of the best looked after power plants around, you can bet that Victor's Capri will hold its value brilliantly. Let's say a farewell to Victor's Capri by soaking in the music of the motor. So good. The original Ford design team must have been very pleased to see that their creation had been taken to the hearts of so many owners over the years. It's not to say, by the way, that there weren't glitches along the way. In fact, an early version of the Capri didn't have any rear side windows at all, until they realised that the car would have to have sick bags installed for the passengers.
At one stage there was no rear window at all on the design, and Sir Patrick Hennessy was chairman, and he got in the back and said, I can't live with this. So therefore, we need a rear window. And also we had cases in some of the early tests where we had people in the rear becoming sick, so it was an obvious thing to do.
Although the Capri was going to sell well anyway, Ford found another way of getting their products into the popular public consciousness by using the power of the goggle box.
Ford's marketing people have always been really switched on, and throughout the 70s they knew how to publicise the car, and one of the best things that you could do to get a car in the public eye was to get it on big TV programmes, and so it got on the Sweeney, it got on the Professionals, and it even got on Only Fools and Horses.
In the name of supporting popular culture, we tracked down the actual shocking green Capri used in the filming of Only Fools and Horses, and it's owned by a Mr. Ian Nixon from Essex.
I'll try and keep it like it was when it was on television, just to keep the authentic sort of, the authentic feel to it.
So what sort of reaction does he get driving a flamboyant TV star car with a mock Tiger interior?
It gets a mixed reaction. Some people will say, yeah, that's the car, and other people will think, who is that bloke driving that car? So, it's almost never a dull moment when you're, driving the vehicle.
One problem that Ian's had with the extensive use of fun fur in the interior is that it's not quite so much fun when it's time to do some rewiring work.
I have had problems trying to get to the wiring on the vehicle because, fur seems to cover everything, and when you want to access a panel, you can't get in there. And it can be a bit of a nightmare. You're sort of fumbling around in the dark to a degree.
But we can't leave the Trotter's Capri without seeing how wonderfully environmentally friendly it is. I somehow don't think this is going to pass the emission legislation. A Capri was made for performance and speed, and the machine was right for tweaking and optimising to get speed and more speed out of the engine, and for testing on private tracks.
I've done 150 mile an hour in this car.
At a push it'll do 130.
It's certainly the fastest car I've been in.
Gone from a Mini and an Escort into a 2.8 S Sport. You know, you thought you'd got into a Formula One because it was that much of a difference.
When the Capri was launched, all of a sudden, traffic lights meant something else. No longer were they just something to stop the flow of traffic. They were an opportunity to prove your virility when they went green if you were in a Capri.
Do you know that looking at other people's Capris, you'll soon notice it's very difficult to find two that are exactly the same. And that was all part of Ford's master plan when the car went on sale.
Ford very early on realised that not everyone wanted to buy the same car. Just as not everyone wants to wear the same clothes or live in the same house. And they took that principle and applied it to cars.
The different custom packs for the Capri really gave it, it was a marvellous marketing idea in many respects.
They used to have an optional extras scheme where a radio or a vinyl roof, sports wheels, you know, you could virtually build your own car as such.
It gave, and in fact all their adverts portrayed the situation where each individual owner could self-style the Capri that he bought to his own specific requirements.
You know, you start off with a 1300, but you could make it look like a 3-litre GXL.
An X-Pack, an L-Pack, an R-Pack.
Pick your own Capri to some extent.
In a way, it was an ego trip for you. So, you know, the last thing you wanted was the base car.
Or you could add them as multiples of each other. You could have an XL, you could have an XLR.
And nobody else would ever have one. The chances of anyone having a Capri just like yours was almost impossible.
How we ever managed to build cars and make it viable, I would not have liked to have been a production controller in those days, ordering the materials, or a vehicle scheduler, but it worked.
You wanted something that all your neighbours could see, and they would be able to see that you had the bit with all the bells and all the whistles fitted to it.
Not only had the owners plenty of personalisation options when it came to buying new all those years ago, the customisation of the Capri continues today. Look at this monster that we found at a recent Capri convention. Here was a car that promised style, practicality and performance at an amazingly affordable price, and all marketed under the slogan, the car you always promised yourself.
Well, I think the car I always promised myself had a few more creature comforts in it than this one. Still got the original blanking plate from the radio that was never fitted. There's a blanking plate over where the cigarette lighter would go. But then, the upside of that is, it's never been smoked in. It's never been on the motorway either. 67,000 miles it's done with one owner.
The Mark I Capri was designed to fit rear passengers okay, but maybe it left a little to be desired in the boot department. I mean, look at this, blimey, what a load of crushed handbags and hats.
Although it looks like a hatch, the Mark I wasn't, and it had a rather small boot. But this didn't stop many families choosing this as their family car.
And so the second version of the Capri became a hatchback with a much larger luggage accommodation.
So the storage issue was solved at a stroke, as the installation of this huge polystyrene ceiling tile demonstrates. 22 cubic feet, eh? Other changes with the Mark II Capri included those in the styling department, of course making sure that those stunning basic lines of the Mark I were not lost.
It was an eye-catching car, there's no, because of the shape of it. You know, when you think about the E-Type Jag, you know, which now unfortunately has gone out of circulation, is that it had that sort of shape. It had like a long front body with a short back. It had that sort of raised little bit on the bonnet as well. It had all the markings of a sports car.
New Capri is more sporty, more functional, and yet just as versatile. Positive sportiness is further underscored throughout the range by black exterior features, keying all models to the Capri S, complementing the cleaner, more sporty line. The third door is still there, of course, surely the most practical feature of all.
Stay with us, and in part 3, we're going to find those special editions, we're going to have a look at the Capri's replacements and give you some very handy tips if you're thinking of buying a classic Capri.
It's my Capri.
Hiya and welcome back to this celebration of that motoring icon, the Capri. Now, as the car got to the end of its illustrious life, some very, very special editions were produced, including the Brooklands 280. And we're going to meet up with Chris Baker from Walsall, who's got an amazing, very rare Brooklands 280 that's done, would you believe, just 28,000 miles.
Well, that was the last of the line made. They've got a Raven leather interior, 15-inch Brooklands wheels, and the special paint job. The Capri, it's something different. You don't see many of them about now, and they're quick.
Even soon after the launch, there were loads of special editions to tempt buyers.
When Capri was first launched, there was the regular version and there was the GT version. It was always the GT version that actually sort of outsold. In fact, right at the beginning, we even did a GT version with a matte black bonnet, which was simply because people had seen Safari, pictures from the Safari rally where, to prevent the glare off the bonnet, you always sprayed the top black. So we actually did matte black bonnets, and we did one in a sort of very interesting sort of mustard colour with a matte black bonnet.
Glyn Watson is the secretary to the Capri Enthusiasts Register. His pride and joy is a specialist modification created by Broadspeed.
Broadspeed were based in the Midlands, owned and run by a chap by the name of Ralph Broad, who tuned all the Escorts, Anglias, etc., for Ford, and had his own company. And he offered a package of modifications for the Capri, in this case in the early 70s.
Glyn's 1972 Capri has the base modification to the engine, suspension and brakes, as well as the installation of these mean rear louvers. It's got rally seats, and let's not forget that distinctive black bonnet.
So there were various little bits of modifications, if you will, inside the vehicle, but generally it was about improving the performance of the car, not only from the point of view of making it go a lot faster, because they increased the brake horsepower from a basic 138 brake horse up to 190 brake.
Like its stablemate, the Cortina, it was only a matter of time before the Capri would be hitting the motorsport scene and making inroads into relatively new sports such as rallycross. Whoops, up and over. So we're talking here about a stylish, sporty car with as much practicality as could be squeezed from it, with a huge range of engines.
The engine range was amazing, because they started off with a 13 and 1600 and then we went to a 2 litre. And within 12 months, they brought the 3 litre out, which was renowned, you know, the length and girth of the country, if you like. The actual 3 litre, there was nothing at the time that could compete with the 3 litre Capri.
And there was a similar engine configuration in Germany, except they were all a V configuration engines.
It's simply not a major modification to them, in the sense that the engine bay is so large that it'll take anything from a 1300 engine, where you could virtually stand in the engine bay with it, and progress from that through to the 1600, the 2 litre, and then on to the 3 litre.
The heady concoction of engine power, drivability and affordability gave rise to more than the average so-called boy racers shelling out for their own Capris and terrorising the honest citizen.
I think the television series, the professionals, had a lot to do with that. Once the cars were a couple of years old and some of the younger lads, it became available to them, you know, it was just probably natural for the, you know, copy the likes of Bodie and Doyle and the like. And that's, sadly, the image is stuck with us.
But Ford hit back at the boy racer image by giving long-term courtesy cars to well-known responsible personalities such as Manchester City soccer stars Peter Barnes and Gary Owen.
You know, we thought we were the Bodie and Doyle of our generation, flying along a little bit, and then all of a sudden in the distance, a very pretty young girl, about 18, I was about 17, 18 at the time, so I slowed down, and she had dressed all in white, so I thought I'd just have a quiet little look as you'd pass. Obviously letting her see the car as well, my sparkling new Ford Capri S. And as I went past, I looked round to see if the front was as good as the back, and it was, but unfortunately as I turned back, everybody else had stopped. And a 3-day-old brand new Capri into the back of somebody else, and it's still vivid to this day. The guy getting out wanting to kill me then realised he was a football fan, thankfully. He was a Manchester City fan, he wanted an autograph.
I suppose every party has to come to an end, to be honest, and by the end of the 80s, the Capri's styling and performance was being overtaken by those new pretenders to the throne. These were the XR range of the Fiestas and Escorts, and cars like their jaw-dropping RS Cosworth. Cars in this market were just getting bigger and brasher, and really the Capri just couldn't compete.
I think it was really the XR4 that killed the Capri, because Fords weren't prepared to put any more development into it.
When it got to the late 80s, then you had so many other different companies who were all, over that period of time, had all introduced their own particular coupe.
The Capri had been going for 18 years, and I think, you know, it's like everything else, nothing lasts forever, and people were looking for a change.
Although several of the design engineers wanted to continue the Capri, Fords had decided no, chop it and we'll start again, and unfortunately they've never regained that position.
In 1986, Ford finally killed off the Capri completely, and the 1,886,647th Capri sadly rolled off the Cologne production line.
There's no interest in selling a few thousand cars. It's mass production and it has to appeal as far as that's concerned.
So, while the devotees were trying to find a new god to worship, the Ford guys were trying to find a new machine to fill the chasm that opened up after the Capri's departure. The Ford Probe was meant to be the spiritual successor to the Capri, but it widely missed the mark. It was overweight, it was underpowered, and well, it was ugly. The Americans who designed the lines may have thought that it had universal appeal, but obviously didn't understand the way we Brit car fans thought.
It just didn't capture what Ford had lost with the Capri.
Driving it was uninvolving, with a lifeless power steering system and poor dynamics. The Ford Probe wasn't even a real car. It was a Mazda MX-6 in drag when it all came down to it.
I think Ford really shot themselves in the foot. For the start, they left it too long to replace the Capri. The Japanese stepped in, and they've always been playing catch-up.
In the 1990s, Ford almost got it spot on for the next car on offer to the Capri generation, the Mondeo-based Ford Kuga.
This is the 2.5 litre V6 monster. Very much the proud inheritor of the sports coupe tradition, with the blue oval on the front.
Here, the connection between the Mark I Capri and the Kuga were crystal clear. Both had sporty lines and both were genuinely fun to drive. So why have they dropped the Kuga? Well, we don't really know, but we think it's a shame. We thought it was a cracking car. But looking back at the Capri's history, it was very important for Ford as a company. When they were building the car, it was the first time that the Ford companies in Europe had actually spoken to one another.
The Capri was a good early example of the Ford companies in Europe, particularly Britain and Germany, talking to each other.
If you saw our Cortina programme, you'll remember how Ford of Germany had a rival car to Ford of Britain's Cortina. It was called the Taunus. Can you believe that separate divisions of the same global organisation fought with each other for market share? But this bizarre state of affairs was coming to a close, and the Capri project was the start of a brave new world for Ford.
By that time, Ford was a pan-European organisation. It was no longer Ford of Britain competing with Ford of Germany.
Combining the resources, their ingenuity, the skills, and coming out with a truly great car.
But with the Probe and the Kuga now out of Ford's UK showrooms, isn't it time for the reinvention of the original Capri for the 21st century?
I don't think Ford could ever reinvent the Capri. They could bring the name back, but there's no way they could bring the car back. It's just not possible. It's a one-off.
You've only got to look at the evolution of a lot of the other marques, like Porsche with their 911, the Mini, the Aston Martin. They've all had this pedigree and they've not allowed it to lapse. MG made a big mistake by not producing one for years and years. Then they had to get back into the marketplace. Now Ford have made the same mistake. It's been since '87, it's been 15 years since we've seen this car. It's now so ready for relaunch that, you know, it's got to happen.
It just needs to be modernised a little bit. Like anything that we've had older, we're only going to look at the football kits now. We've reverted back to the old style of football kits. Why can't we revert back to the old style of Capri?
Actually, if you really wanted a new car, you could do worse than by importing one of the latest American Mustangs over to here. They have arguably kept the feel of the original fastback design. Those latest stateside fast Fords have kept very close to the original brief of flash looks, hot power and affordability. And here's something you may not know. America bought a fair share of Capris too, where it was on sale alongside the very Ford Mustang it was originally inspired by.
As a customer in the United States, you were offered both the Mustang and the Capri. And the Capri, as the exotic European import, sold extraordinarily well.
But the Capri was never more than just a novelty in the States, let's be honest about it. It just wasn't big enough for our colonial cousins.
When you look at the Capris as compared to the American sports cars of the era, the engines were tiny in cubic capacity, etc. The largest engine that they sold in the Capri in the States was the 2.8 V6, which we got as the 2.8 injection. Prior to that, that was the largest engine that was fitted as standard by Fords. The chaps in South Africa did manage to muscle in a Mustang V8 into the Capri, and that was known as the Piranha. But that was purely a South African option.
And you know, talking about the Mustang, doesn't that bring us full circle? And what do Capri owners have in the way of advice for you if you're thinking of hunting out a classic Capri here in the UK?
I'd advise anybody looking for a Capri to buy a decent one. Don't buy the first one they see. Check it over very closely.
I think somebody who hasn't owned a Capri before would probably have to go for a Mark III for practicality. Get used to a Mark III, 1600 2 litre, 2.8, and if they like the car, then perhaps go to a Mark II or a Mark I, which obviously needs a little bit more looking after, and spares availability is that much harder, obviously.
Now here's an example of a lucky find, a 1600 XL 1973 model, only used for shopping and the odd trip. It's racked up a paltry 6,000 miles in 9 years, and then it gets garaged for 13 years untouched. Richard Boyce from Widnes heard about it and he jumped, and today it's gleaming and still with only 9,727 miles on the clock.
At first, it was hard to believe that there was a Mark I with just 6,000 miles on the clock. So eventually I went to see it, and I just bought it there and then, and all I've ever done really is just take it out now and again and look after it the best I can.
And of course, once you've got your Capri, you'll want to keep it MOT'd and legally on the road with replacement parts and advice. And the best ways of getting both of these is to visit the Capri Auto Jumbles and to join a club like Capri Club International. A great feature of the Ford Capri is its ability to be worked on easily by most people, even with limited tools and limited mechanical knowledge.
I wouldn't say I'm a hands-on mechanic, but if you open the bonnet, you can almost climb inside with the engine. And even for me, I took the dynamo off 2 weeks ago and I was looking inside it. With my day-to-day car, if something goes wrong, you know, I'd hold my head and take it back to the dealers. So there's a certain magic there in as much as you can roll your sleeves up and have a go. And generally speaking, most of the bits and pieces are available. The panels are more difficult to get, but many of the mechanical components are still available.
To analyse what Ford are doing right, you know, we have to realise, you and I, that cars aren't just machines. They've got to hit those emotional buttons as well. So how do we sum up this marvellous motoring icon?
Well, to start with, it's British.
It was sporty.
It's simple.
It was something new, it was something different.
You can work on it easily.
It was first in the field, it was a trendsetter.
And it's just a classic design.
When I was working at the Halewood plant, just for a bit of fun, I remember writing this poem, so I'll just recite a few lines for you now. Henry Ford in heaven sat reclining in the stars, extolling to the angel band the virtue of his cars. My escorts and Capris are renowned on Mother Earth, from pole to pole, from east to west, throughout the length and girth.
And suddenly here was the opportunity to buy something that looked much sportier, was probably going to be more fun to drive, and would certainly impress the hell out of your neighbours.
Thanks, gang, for being with us on this programme and for looking back nostalgically at one of the world's great cars. And if you've got a classic Capri, take care of it. From me to you, see you later, alligator. God bless.
coming down the street. They get respect from everyone they meet. It's a 3-liter baby and it looks so fine. Bodie and Don are gonna hit that line. What do you see? Capri for me. We do the stroll, we rock and roll, we do the twist, we've never missed. Do the wild tootsie and do the jerk. Hey baby, you'll wanna see it work. What do you see? Capri for me. We hit the line and she's mine all mine. I'm running free in my Capri. Maybe baby, we'll rock and roll. Maybe baby, we'll lose control. What do you see? Capri for me.